Welcome to Coffee Chat, the investment banking recruitment podcast brought to you by Offer Goblin. I'm Mike Neal. This is Ryan Tan. We are the number one coaches in investment banking, according to pretty much us. What we're going to talk about today is critically important, and it's absolutely central to this podcast. We're going to talk about coffee chats. We're going to talk about what they mean. We're going to talk about how to do them. We're going to talk about how not to mess them up and a bunch of other stuff. So stick around. First, everyone's favorite segment, Ryan giving the state of the industry. Let's hear how's it going in recruiting right now, Ryan Tan.
Sure, thanks, Mike. So I'll say the summer is usually historically where things slow down a bit. This year it's a bit different, right? It's you have this interesting dynamic in the market where that deal flow is at an all-time high, right? You also have a lot of folks still on the street looking for jobs, right? At the same time is that you have a lot of movement. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing people are trying to lateral. We're also seeing banks, looking to hire, but they're being very picky. So, you know, they're still going to have a high bar. They will not just take anyone like they did during the SPAC flourishment, right? During the SPAC era, banks hired anyone with a heartbeat. So you had accountants, right, who got hired. You had back office who got hired. You had people who basically didn't know much, right, because they needed bodies to throw. So banks learned the lesson because after the SPAC slowdown, they realized people couldn't do work. So they had massive layoffs after that. So they're being very picky. So I would say this is that I'm working with a candidate right now who's trying to lateral is if you are trying to, switch jobs, is you have to pitch yourself as someone who's experienced, someone who's run multiple deals, multiple processes. You can't just pitch yourself as, hey, I want to switch or I want to, upgrade. Banks aren't going to take it, especially with the whole AI coming in. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the finance industry on where things are going to go. Banks are going to be extra picky. But if you got good deals under your belt, you could pitch that. You know your technicals in and out. You know your deals in and out. You know how to run processes. You're a good strategic thinker, add value. Banks are going to really call you.
Yeah, that actually reminds me when I was in consulting after COVID. I think when COVID hit, everybody in consulting was laid off because they didn't really have a forecast of what would happen. And most of them anticipated a slowdown of tech, especially implementations. But what actually happened was a huge boom. So they suddenly had to hire all these people. And there were a ton of people who basically got laid off from, let's say, Accenture and then hired at Deloitte like 2, 3 months later for a big salary bump. So these kind of weird cycles happen. I think the more that you're in the market, the more you'll sort of see these things and be used to them. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think especially with the volatility of today's market, it's always going to be changing. So Ryan,
Hmm.
now tell us how is it going? What's new with you? You're back in the guest room. It looks like
Yes.
back
For my
home.
office.
Your
This is my
office. I
office.
like it.
This is my
Yeah.
office. Not the guest room. It's my office.
And
I
what's
mean,
the well, you got a new camera, you got the goblin green tie on. I
I
mean,
always
what?
wear the goblin green tie. This is also the training the street green. This is also, you can think of this green as the color for your cells when you reference another sheet.
Oh,
That's the green.
I love
Right.
it. Always teaching, always
Yeah.
educating. So I'm still up. People can see that I'm in this cabin. This isn't like a fake background. I put these bones here. These are deer
Mhm.
bones to try to sprucing it up because our producer said that we were being a little too dry in the background. But I'm up in the North Woods. I am guiding wilderness trips. So nothing especially new today. We're doing a lot of work to set up because we've got a bunch of people coming in Sunday to base camp. So we'll be guiding them. But I am talking to a lot of clients. We had a live event. I've been doing live events on Leland. Found, I think, my home in the MBA IB recruiting universe, and that's kind of
Mhm.
where I'd like to stay. I have worked with other types of candidates, of course, and will, but having a lot of fun with that. So let's jump into the topic at hand. And we'll start with a very loaded, potentially loaded question.
Mhm.
Ryan, what is a coffee chat?
Ah, the dreaded coffee chat. I don't know about dreaded. Think of the coffee chat as the interview to get the interview. Right? It's one of those things as those who have, journey, the arduous journey of getting into banking and crossing the treacherous roads is you got to network to get the coffee chat and you got to ace the coffee chats to get the interview. So I call it the interview before the interview or the interview to get the interview is probably the best way to put it.
So, is there any coffee involved?
It depends, right? Ideally, the best coffee chats is where there actually coffee involved, right? Because you meet the guy in person, right?
Yeah.
But most coffee chats is nowadays is, you take a call or, you meet them over Zoom if they're willing, right? But, the best case is if you could get an in-person networking session, that's even better. Anything personable, right?
So, what is
So
the format of these? I mean, let's say I don't know what a coffee chat is. You're telling me it's the interview before the interview. How do I get a coffee chat? And when I walk into one, what happens? What do we talk about?
so I'll say this is it depends on what level you are, right? If you're an undergrad or an MBA, getting coffee chats at the MBA level is much easier and much structured, right? It usually starts with the info sessions, or if you're at booth, they call them crop circles. Right? We never call them crop circles at Berkeley Haas.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so and then you surround the folks, right? And then you have if they kind of like you and then you drop in your resume, they give you coffee chats, right? Then you actually meet them in person, right? So the MBA ones, they're closer to the real thing of actual coffee chats. Maybe they're actual ones. If you're an undergrad, ooh, a lot of that just to get a coffee chat. You're gonna have to like do a cold emailing, a lot of networking, referrals through your clubs, through peers, through upperclassmen. You might be sending hundreds, if not thousands, of emails just to get some coffee chats. It's brutal, man. And then you can also get them from info sessions, right? If you're at a target school, banks will come, they'll send their recruiting class of analysts, but man, those things they're packed out the door. Right? They're packed like sardines and you're trying to get noticed. You shoot them emails, you spam them, and you're just praying, God forbid, that, they don't ignore your email and they say yes and respond and you plead, you pray, and you're desperate for that coffee chat.
Yeah. So there's this kind of duality about it. And I think maybe we've covered it just a little in the other sessions that we've done, but undergrads are this sort of zombie horde of masses that are just going to kind of flood the zone. They're going to like cold email a ton of people. They're going to kind of be stacked in and tearing the roof off to get inside to talk to investment bankers. Whereas the MBA process typically is a lot more structured. A lot of times the coffee chats are sort of doled out. You go to the Goldman info session. They say, give us your email, and then they'll have like kind of three people that you go and talk to. So very different experience, but the format of those are actually still sort of the same when you actually get into that type of phone call. Um, so what is it then once you've landed that? Well, another thing I think to add is that the way that you set up to schedule a coffee chat, this is my recommendation, and we have articles on this on Offer Goblin, which I'd recommend checking out, is you send them 3 1-hour time slots and you block those off on your calendar and you say, do you have any availability to meet in these times? The time frame should be between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. in the banker's time zone, Monday through Friday, that you're sending. Not only sending the emails, but also the slots that you're sending should be within that range. And there's a little bit of sort of like etiquette and sort of polite things that you could say there. But that's sort of like, I would say, setting up the coffee chat. So we may do another episode where we cover that aspect a little bit more, especially as we get a little closer into like when people are kind of dealing with that. But what happens in a coffee chat, Ryan? Like, how does that actually, what actually happens when people are like clicking on a Zoom link and there's a banker from Morgan Stanley on the other end? How does that conversation go?
So think of it, this is just like networking in the broadest sense, right? They're trying to get to know you and they're trying to do a quick evaluation of you, see whether or not they like you or they see if you're fit enough to be in banking, and whether or not they feel comfortable pushing you forward to potentially a first round interview or potentially their other colleagues, right? So you could think of it, it's almost like a quick speed date in some sense, right? It's like like kind of like you meet someone and you're chatting and you're trying to ask for them to give you their number so that you could get like the next date, right? Or the first official date, first round interview, right? But like, yeah, you can't just go walk in without preparation as well, right? Because when I used to take coffee chats from folks, right? Folks would cold reach out on LinkedIn, some guessed at my email, and maybe there's some referrals. I'd say the easiest way to get a coffee chat is to just have someone give you a referral to somebody at the bank that knows, right? So
Yeah.
I have friends who knew me and say, hey, I got a friend who's interested in banking. Can you chat with them? I usually take those calls out of courtesy, right? Because it came through a friend or a channel I knew. That doesn't mean the kid's going to get an interview, though. I'm still going to assess them all these coffee chats, right?
Hmm.
And then there's like some folks who like sent them to via LinkedIn or guessed at my email. And depending on like what information they have, I may or may not take that call, right? If it's some random person with a LinkedIn that has no picture, no name, no school, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm not taking this kid seriously. Or if someone
Yeah.
shoots me like an email and doesn't give an intro about themselves, it's like also drop your resume in those emails, right?
Hmm.
We all know what you're looking for. On my end, when I got a resume, it's just easier for me to take a quick look and screen and then decide whether or not it's worth my time to talk to you. Right? If you're
Yeah.
not dropping in your resume, I might just not even bother taking that chance.
Yeah.
So, subtle ways to get the person to know and make sure when you send your resume, it is polished. It is, for example, well received, or your LinkedIn's updated. We're making a LinkedIn request just
Hmm.
so it's easier to say yes. Right. And then
Yeah.
I might respond quickly, like, hey, what's your number? Do you have a quick time? And I'm probably a bit more casual than most folks when I took coffee chats because I'm just like, look, I don't need to stick this on a calendar. Give me your number. Are you free now? I'll hop on the phone now. Right. But that was me.
Interesting.
Other folks
Yeah.
would have been like, let's set a time, a Zoom, and then they'll send a calendar invite. Right. But I'm just like, let's just get it over with. I know what you're looking for. I'll screen you. And so I'd be like, what's your number? You want to talk now? All right, let's talk now. That was me.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I think uh a lot like we kind of talked about this I think in one of the earlier episodes, but the a lot of the banking stuff is very like, if you want to meet, let's just meet right now. Or like, I'm going to come over sometime in the afternoon. And things are very much like that in banking. And like having a set meeting time and meeting schedule is not as sort of efficient as like, okay, this meeting only needed to take 10 minutes. So this one's 7 minutes, this one's 3 minutes. Um, I think there's a lot we could say on like the cold outreach thing. And I'm almost thinking like maybe the next episode will focus a lot more on that. Um, Resume, we have a resume template on Offer Goblin. I've seen a lot of terrible resume templates, and so we kind of pushed our own because it's really not that complicated, I think. um a lot of the things that separate you, just to give you like a principled sense of what you should orient on, is putting in some effort into the message between your resume, your LinkedIn, all of these other things. If you think about it, all of those things represent embodied energy. Okay. So you take a lot of energy, you put a lot of time into your resume, whatever. You can kind of see that that's effort has been put into that. If it's lazy, meaning low amounts of energy are embodied in the thing that you're producing, It just people just kind of sense that right away. Off of the energy thing, I always find it interesting that power in physics is energy over a unit of time. So how much energy you can produce in a short period of time is representative of your power level. And that can be expanded by obviously like leverage, right? Tools like AI, for people like working, that's like hiring people and increasing their leverage, right? Someone is very powerful because they have other people who can do things for them very
Mike's
quickly.
engineering background is coming out right now.
Yes. I mean, we engineer the process, right? I want to give you the real like in the weeds detail. So, um all of that said, I think that those are the biggest things with cold outreach, and we'll probably do another episode where we cover that more in depth. But all of those things are like, how do you get into this coffee chat, this discussion, right? This speed date item. And Ryan puts it right. Like, it's an interview for an interview. I would even say that it is an interview. It's framed as though it's not, but it really is. And a lot of times it can even skew into technicals. I had coffee chats where I was asked, like, what do you think is going on in the market? And really getting drilled down into, like, why do you think that? And tell me more about that. And how does this affect that? Um, and I think people should be ready for that too, because that conversation can sometimes be light and fluffy. You might get someone like Ryan, and a lot of times, like, that's great. I had a
Oh,
lot of
well, no, I'll rip
conversations.
your head off if I want to. I'm not going to be light and fluffy. I'll
I
take
know
the
that
color.
I know that you can be hostile if you need to be. I know that you would be, but you are not a person that is full of malice. At least I would hope
Oh, no,
so. You
I'm,
will
no.
meet people that are full of malice. A
Yes,
lot of
you
them
will.
are
I got
from
my head ripped
Wharton.
off.
Uh,
Oh,
so,
man, just
you
shading the
know,
Wharton folks.
we're throwing shade at left and right because, you know, if you have a coffee chat with someone from Wharton, I mean, they have a night where they host, the MBAs do this. They have a big night where they have a big boxing match and they all beat each other up. I'm not kidding. You can look that up. And they don't understand where the stereotypes come from, but I think we all do. But anyway,
You're going to have to
this
tell
coffee.
them about the stereotypes. Not everyone knows about the Wharton stereotype.
Well,
You need to let
they'll
folks know.
okay. I don't. You're really making me spell this out, but
Yeah, I'm
in
putting you on the
another
spot. This
episode,
is
how about
recorded too.
this? How about this? Well, in another episode, we'll cover the stereotypes of the different schools and the
Schools, the
different
business school.
banks, because I think there's a lot of juicy meat there.
Hmm.
Coffee chats, Ryan. You're taking me off track here. Coffee chats, okay? Don't. So the first question that you almost always get in a coffee chat is what, Ryan?
Tell me about yourself.
Tell me about yourself, right? So there's almost always the beginning is going to be the same. Tell me about yourself. Why do you want to go into banking? If it's like, let's say you want to do tech coverage, why tech? If you want to do any other thing, you're going to basically get asked in the beginning, like, why do you want to do these things? Like, where are you coming from with all of this? What are your intentions? What are they asking for there? Like, what is that? Like, how does that go well or go badly for someone?
So, I mean, it's just like introductions in general, right? It's like, think of this. I'm trying to get to know you as quick as possible. My brain is dead, right? He's like, just lay it to me. Give me the quick cliff notes of who you are, right?
Yeah.
And for some people, they kind of don't know how to say it, right? I've had people who try to be creative with stories and be like, I used to be a basketball player. And I'm just like, dude, I've been working 80 hours this week. I slept at 4 a.m. I'm not trying to figure out how, like, you were playing basketball, then you ran into Kobe Bryant, and I don't know, and then somehow you got lost at In and Out, and maybe you ran into finance bro, and that's how you got an interest, and then you discovered, I don't know what a deep. I don't have time for that, right? And
That's how
so,
I got into it.
oh, so it works for you, right? Well, well, okay, maybe different advice from different folks, right? But like, I tell it is like, yes, you want to be interesting, but at the same time, make it easy for me to just like get who you are, right? Don't tell me your entire life
Mhm,
story. You're not in a therapy session. I don't
mhm.
need to know the 14 different problems you had since childhood. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised, some of the people. And you're doing a sales pitch, right? It's kind of like the whole why do you want to do investment banking, right? In the back of my
Mhm.
head, I'm just trying to figure out, yes, are you interesting, but are you like interesting on topic? And
Yeah.
then I'm also trying to quickly figure out is like, dude, is this guy like a fit for banking? Does he have relevant skill set? Does he have relevant knowledge?
Yeah.
Right. And does he know why he's here? Right? And this is the whole point is like there's all these unwritten rules. Is you and I both know you're trying to get the job, right? And you
Right.
should know that I'm kind of assessing you. So
Mhm.
if you show up telling me how, I don't know, you love volunteering at a food bank and like doing strategy case comps, I'm like, sure, good for you. But like
Right.
in the back of my head, I'm kind of be like, I don't think you know why you're here talking to me. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think that's one of the most common things that people get wrong across all forms of communication, both especially as far as, resumes, tell me about yourself, but just all of that is you really need to keep it simple. If I was working with a candidate who's an engineer, and there are some things that like I understand what he's saying because I have a technical background. He's talking about semantic search, he's talking about, databases and all of these things, and I'm like, I get what you're saying, but like they're not going to understand what you're saying, and even the ones that do are going to be kind of annoyed that you're making them think. So it's just like bubble up what you're saying and try to keep it very simple. It's actually very difficult to do that because in order to sort of simplify and make things concise, what you're doing essentially is saving them time. You're like pre-digesting that information so that when it gets to them, they can just completely receive it. There's this book called Thinking Fast and Slow. They talk about like system 1 and system 2 thinking. System 1 thinking is like what's your name? Oh, I can tell you my name without really having to think a lot, process any calories in my brain. What's 33 times 17? For me to give you that answer, I would really need to like strain and think, right? The entire coffee chat, you need that person to be in system 1. You don't want them to ever really need to strain to understand what you're saying or like think twice about what you're saying. It should just be so like, oh, it should be so sort of intuitive and effortless for them. Um, because if the one thing that I always tell people is that you should just assume that the person that you're talking to is sleep deprived. That's just like the standard, like any banker that you talk to, just assume that they're sleep deprived. And like, even if they're not, just go off of that assumption and keep it very simple. So I think those are all like really good tips that you should focus on. Um, so this sort of covers like that intro phase of like, tell me about yourself. They're trying to like sort of get a sense of like, who you are, where you're coming from. They need like certain details that are like sort of obvious, like what school you're from, what year you are, your major, like those sorts of things. And we'll do another episode where we like go into more depth about like the story and all those things. But the other phases of this that can kind of come up, well, the last phase, which is almost always there, is like, do you have any questions for me? And we'll cover that like after this. But in the middle, there's oftentimes like flex. That period can go to a number of different things. They could ask you, depending on where you are in the recruiting cycle and depending on the dynamic, they could ask you straight up technical questions. I had some technical questions that were like, on an income statement, let's say revenue is 10, let's say expenses were 5, what's the amount of taxes paid or something, not nothing too crazy, but it was like, are you, do you know anything about finance? Or are you just like, you're just, totally coming in without any, it's like a little bit of a tire kick. It wasn't like a full grill. So, uh, what are some other kind of curveballs, Ryan, that you maybe have heard in coffee chats, or maybe you threw some?
so I will say this is right. To tell me about yourself, that's the first question. I'm just trying to, you need to get across who you are for me to understand, right? But then the other common questions are in a coffee chat, right? And this is sort of like think of I'm talking more from a perspective of not MBA structured recruiting, right? So yes, you could say anything goes, right? But there are other things that like if I'm talking to you, I'm trying to assess whether or not I'm going to refer you, right? Or put in a word for maybe talk to other people or HR. So I'm trying to figure out is do you immediately know what investment banking even is? Are you wasting my time? Do you actually want
Mhm.
to do it? Have you put in effort? So common questions that might be asked, why investment banking, right? That's a very natural second question, right? Or I might check if the kid has done his or her homework. Well, of course I'll introduce myself, but for example, which specific group?
Mhm.
Also, are you interested in tech, media, telecom, healthcare, industrials, energy, etc.? Right? Do you have good reasons
Mhm.
for that? Have you been following the market? So I'm trying to figure out that if you're networking with me at the undergrad level and I know you're trying to get a job, right, as well as get me put in the pipeline, is if I pass you to somebody or HR or someone in at the office, are you going to embarrass me or are you going to
Mhm.
look good? Right.
Right.
And so it's, and I'm trying to use a span of like 15 to 30 minutes to figure out. Now, I will say this when it comes to coffee chats, is just because someone's very nice and somebody's very polite with you as a banker, that doesn't mean you have a good coffee chat, right?
Mm.
You can also say that if I'm starting to grill you, that might not also be a bad coffee chat either, because I'm actually spending time and effort. Of course,
Yep.
read the room. Everyone's different. Maybe some cranky warden guy had a really bad day. His MD ripped his head off and shoved a stick up his ass, right? And he's taking it out on you, right? Right. Each case is different, right? See, answers may vary, right? But in my personal experience, if after I generally know within the first 5 minutes or even the first 2, 3 minutes is whether or not this is headed in the right direction, if I'll like pass this kid forward. And
Yeah.
yes, I usually allocate them 30 minutes, right? Just to be polite because that's the standard. It might be shorter nowadays because it's so competitive. But if the kid clearly does not belong here, I'm
Right.
just going to be polite and just go, yeah. And I might just ask easy questions, be like, so, yeah, why do you like this? What are your thoughts? How's school, right? It's not going to even be because I'm
Yeah.
just like, at that point, my brain's like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
not spending any more effort. So,
Yeah.
and so that first impression, that tell me about yourself and maybe why investment banking is don't think of it as every quarter or every inning of this ball game is equal. Ain't
Mm.
so, right? Maybe you could try to recover at the very end, but if you lose me within the first 5 to 10 minutes, you might not even get. It's like taking the GRE or the GMAT, right? The
Yeah.
questions
Yeah.
adjust. That's how I think of
Yeah.
it, how I pitch it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think that's I've had many candidates who came out of interviews, coffee chats, things like that, saying that they felt like it went great, that they made one mistake, but the rest was really good. Sometimes the one mistake that you make is like, well, that was a very like basic and telling mistake. The fact that you
Yeah.
didn't know that is like it's even though it's simple, it's like the fact you didn't know the simple fundamental thing, it shows that you're really not in it.
Yeah.
So and then the other thing is like I've had candidates that just like got grilled and they were like, I'm like in shambles and they moved forward or they got an offer. I had a candidate that went to a final round super day and the MD who basically ran the in the practice for that region just was like totally like on his case about every detail and drilled in deep. Even he told a very funny story on the fly where he went to an event in another city and he forgot to bring a tie and he needed a tie. So he bought one from someone on the street, which I think is a great story because
Yeah.
it's like, wow, you taking initiative to like pay someone on the street and like make it happen, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
MD is like, well, why didn't you bring a tie? Like, what's. And so it's
Mm.
like, woo. But he got the offer, right?
Yeah.
They're going to really test the people that they want there. And that's not to say that, like, I think if they really don't think that you belong there, they're probably not going to grill you that heavily because they'll probably just be like, oh, okay, like, whatever, like, it's kind of already over. There's no need for
Yeah.
me to, like, put the effort in. So, um, it goes both ways. I think the core thing is in coffee chats, interviews, super days, you need to just maintain composure no matter what. You need to just assume that like they're doing it and you're still in and they still like you and like just kind of keep that attitude. I always say that it's like being a front desk receptionist at like a
Yeah.
luxury hotel, like a ultra luxury hotel where guests will come in with whatever problem and whatever attitude and whatever thing going on. And no matter what, you're going to be like, yes, sir, right away, sir. Let me get that for you. Oh, that would be net income goes up by 10, or, you're going to always stay in that pocket. And the part of the reason that they do all this, by the way, because I think like it's not just out of sadism, um, is that they want to they want to see if you can handle that from a client, right? Because a
Yep.
client will come in and rip someone's head off, and they
Ha.
can't be like cursing out clients because they need clients. So part of the job is sometimes taking abuse. So part of the coffee chat and part of the entire process is just trying to simulate some of what you might run into on the job. I don't know if that sparks any memories, Ryan, of people getting chewed out on calls and
Oh yeah, all the time. And then I guess the best way to think of it is that your bankers are your clients, right?
Mhm.
And so treat them as such, right? And I think banking is one of those things is like it builds a lot of character, right? You need to learn to navigate things that are a bit testy, right? And things that and and just roll with the punches and come back the next day, which is why it's a great growth experience. Like no
Mhm.
other job, call it abuse if you like, right? Which yes, it's abusive, but on the one hand is like no other job is gonna like, get real with you fast, right?
Mhm.
Like you want the folks to give you honest feedback and to chew you out. Right? You don't want is
Yeah.
like everyone giving you a trophy and good job. I think the one thing I fear the most when I was in banking was I actually feared the bankers that didn't give me critical feedback or, you know,
Yeah.
weren't afraid
Totally.
of ripping me off because there is also a lot of politics and a lot of gossip in banking. And
Mhm.
you'd be surprised on how much people shit on others behind others people's backs. Right. I rather you like shit
Yes.
on me in my face, right? And then I can fix it than like, have knives in my back when I'm not looking. Right. But we're going way off tangent. I want to get back to the coffee chat in terms of like I want to emphasize on the point is like, yeah, don't assume anywhere throughout the coffee chat that you either have this in the bag or you completely lost it. Right. Yes, maybe the
Mhm.
other guy on the other hand is making decisions, but even if you have a great start, you could still lose the interview. Right.
Right.
Or even if you crash terribly, if you can still recover, have a game plan. I think one of the things is that a lot of people go into those coffee chats without any game plan, right? They just like think
Mm.
of it as I'm going to respond. Right?
Yeah.
That's not. You're going to get yourself. You're just going to get run over, right? And we could
Yeah.
talk about about a specific game plan, Mike. Or I'm also having to share stories with good coffee chats I've had with folks, or bad coffee chats that I had with folks.
Yeah.
We'll take it in whichever direction you want.
Well, let's get through the remaining. So, keeping your composure. The last stage is the questions. Like almost always,
Mhm.
there's a stage of maybe there's another, let's say, questions and CTA, if we call it that, right? The
Yeah.
questions is going to be basically, got any questions for me? We'll talk about that. The CTA is basically your opportunity to try to say, like, yeah, and if you have anyone else that you can refer me to, like, I'd love to chat with more people on your team. Please let me know. And you want some kind of CTA means call to action. You want some kind of call to action that kind of like basically moves you into the next thing, like converts the coffee chat. Sometimes the CTA would just be like, oh, okay, like let me follow up with you in a week or something like that. But let's talk about questions because this is a very common question that I get asked on live events and just from all kinds of people. What is a good and what is a bad question in a coffee chat?
So I will say my care is in this case is it always helps for you to do your homework first, right? Realize who you're talking to because this will vary across candidates or bankers. right? If you're talking to an analyst who's freaking burned out, has been working 120 hours straight, and it's so clear from the coffee chat, he or she's so tired. Asking a question to try to impress them, something that's super technical, is probably not the way to go, right? But hey, maybe, in that case, you're probably more interested in building camaraderie with that guy, right? So if he's from your school, maybe he went to the same club where you have some mutual connections. Maybe it's a point to break the ice. And this is usually against traditional advice, right? But read the room. On the other hand, right, if you're dealing with an associate, a VP or MD or director, etc., and you could tell throughout the coffee chat that they've been super excited about talking about deals, about themselves, about what they did, or they're just,
Mm,
really good.
yeah.
Ask them a question where you've done homework on, right? And this is
Yeah.
where, if you're looking at an MD, try to find which industry he covers, what deals he's worked on, and he loves to
Yeah.
talk. Then ask him, like, I heard you, I saw you working on that SpaceX deal, right? I'm curious, how the hell did Goldman, beat up Morgan Stanley, right? Michael Grimes at Morgan Stanley has had that, he has the cell phone number of Elon Musk. You know, certain things, right? Shows that you do your homework. I mean, it could be technical. You could talk about, hey, I'm curious how the hell did you get to that valuation? I looked at your prospectus, right? And shows drop some breadcrumbs to show you did your homework, right?
Mm.
Just be like, I read your perspective. You guys are valuing this at 80 times revenue. Like, how the hell, right? Or maybe if you want to really impress them, like, I built the DCF for the SpaceX, right? How the hell did you get to this assumption for like data compute, right? I
Mm.
mean, it doesn't, I mean, there's so many ways you can take it, right? But take a step
Yeah.
back and sort of is remember who your audience is. And this is like any sales job. And
Mm.
then realize, what are you trying to sell the guy, right? You're trying to make the guy think that maybe you're easy and chill to work with. If they're like a caffeinated 120-hour center view guy, right? Because you guys work insane hours. Or maybe it's just an MD who wants somebody who really knows his stuff, right? So read the room and then sell it to them. But this comes with lots of preparation, right?
Mm.
The coffee chat's not one necessarily in the coffee chat. It starts with a lot of preparation. So I always
Mm.
have folks prepare, right? The good answers will vary. The good answers are tailored, right? It's like dating. I hate to make this reference over and over. It's like you go on a date. You're not going to use the same can of spiel. You're not going to be like, I graduated from Harvard. I'm currently an MBA student at GSB. I have a net worth of over 10 million USD. I drive a rich car and like I live in a. No, the girls can be like, what the fuck, you creep? Oh, wait, probably shouldn't be cursing on live broadcast. Right?
I don't know. I
So,
honestly don't know if that's gonna get us banned and blackballed entirely, Ryan, but I hope
oh
not.
boy.
But I mean, I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh, that's really cool. What kind of seats do you have in the car?" I mean, I don't
Oh
know.
God.
Uh,
Maybe,
uh,
maybe you tell them you drive a what are the hot cars these days? I don't a Lamborghini, a
I,
Bugatti, a Ferrari. I don't know.
I'm in a canoe most of the time, so asking the wrong guy. But so what I think is I actually have kind of a different opinion about it. And I
Mhm.
think, well, one caveat I would say to what you're saying, what you're advising or saying is that you want to be very careful if you ask a question like that, for one, that it's not like material, non public information, because like there's
Yeah,
certain things that they can't answer questions on. And two, that they would actually be the person who would know the answer to that, right? Because like,
yeah.
okay, even if you're talking about, let's say, an office, let's say the office, like let's say you're talking to someone from the Evercore office in Menlo Park, and you ask them a question about like a deal that happened there.
Mhm.
If that person like wasn't on that deal, they may not really know the answer, and like you've kind of put them in a weird position where they basically have to say I don't know, and that's just not really a pleasant feeling for people. Um, I usually go with like easier layups than that. I go with things like, because to me, the questions phase is an opportunity to like bridge into conversations that I want to have. So almost always, I try to have the questions be something like fairly positive. You don't want to ask like, "Oh, what was the worst day that you ever had in banking?" Because that could be like very, very. traumatic and bad for that person. It's all similarly saying stuff like, why did you why didn't you sometimes, like, when, for example, if you looked on their LinkedIn and you saw that they like switched companies, that's not always necessarily that they like intended to do that. They could have gotten laid off. And so, like, there's certain things I would just try to avoid. And just for the awkwardness, I tend to focus on things like, well, and then the other thing is, like, if you ask very general questions, like, so if you ask, like, what's the culture like here? That's just a very, I mean, that question I would say is not off limits, but it's not necessarily the easiest one to answer, especially junior people. I think senior people will usually have a formation of that because they're sort of leaders. But yeah, with what I would try to skew towards is asking questions where the answer is going to give you that information without you asking it in a way. So, like, for example, if you wanted to know the culture, you could say, like, who's been the most supportive person on your team and how have they supported you? That's a, that would give you a
Yeah.
sense of not only like what the types of people are on the team, but like what's the team dynamic like without it really being like really on the nose, you saying that. Um, the other thing to think about, and this is like a lawyer thing, is to not ask questions you don't know the answer to, or you don't know the direction that the
Yeah.
question will go into. Again, because it could go somewhere dark. So, like, ideally, if it's like, oh, I looked on your LinkedIn, I saw you did a master's in physics in Sweden. I thought the topic was really cool. Can you can you tell me more about that? That's something I think that's like, it's a good sort of contained topic. They're probably going to be very interested in it, and you probably will have a good conversation with them about that.
Yeah.
The other sort of direction that you can go, and that you should go and need to go, is you need to be asking questions as though you're seriously considering this career, but you sort of have other options. And so, what I mean by that is, like, for example, if you're an MBA associate, they're expecting you to come in and work your way up to partner. So if you're talking to a partner, you're almost asking them for like career advice. It's like, I want to get where you are. Like, how do I do that? And like, what is it like to be in this position? And in the context of like, you're kind of kicking the tires on that lifestyle. So you can ask them, like, how has your skills, how have you evolved your skills over time, and like, what did that look like? What were the sort of big moments, the big wins for you that kind of you felt like were the big moving forward points in your career? For junior people, I think, like, skewing onto questions that's like, how has the last like week been? Like, what have you been up to? What are the skills that you came in with that you thought were really useful? I'll say one last thing because I'm ranting here, but
All good. No,
I
you'd love
think
to hear
that
you rant, Mike.
you're like, I get to sit here and scroll. I'm happy. The last thing I'll say is that there's a saying in investing that is, if you want advice, ask for money, and if you want money, ask for advice. And most of the time, what you want to do in a coffee chat is ask for advice, right? You don't want to ask for money being the offer. You want to ask, say, what would you go about doing to better prepare for, if you're having coffee chats right now, to prepare over the summer? What would you do, like, if you were in my position, if you wanted to sort of learn more, gain a deeper understanding of what investment banking truly is underneath, what types of books would you read? What types of podcasts would you engage with? What types of newsletters would you, subscribe to? I think those types of questions are also, like, really good. Not only is it practical, but it'll also show you as someone who's like actually kicking the tires and wants to go in this career.
So I'm gonna push back a bit on that in terms of I agree and disagree at the same time.
Hmm.
So when they ask you at the end, like, do you have any questions for me or for the candidate? I usually think of it this way: is prepare 2 or 3 questions, right?
Hmm.
And each question is gonna have a different use for it, right? And so this is where this is also about reading the room as well as reading your entire coffee chat, right? Is throughout your coffee chat, what are the things that you've expressed yourself, right? if you haven't expressed yourself as competent yet,
Mm,
asking like what advice you have for me only reinforces the fact that you're not competent, right?
mm,
But if you've already come across as very competent, right? It's clear that you're smart, you know the deals, you've basically are very qualified, you're sharp. Asking one of those questions, can come across as keeps you
mm.
humble, keeps you sort of like generally interested, and it helps, right?
Yeah,
So I usually see it as definitely read the room, use your three questions, have it spread out across, right? Don't be a hardo and ask three technical questions. Then so at the end of the day, this coffee chat is a sales job, right? Mike and I will give you good pointers and good advice, right? But also, this is why having a coach to be able to assess each situation and mock with you and just see how you come across is the advice we give is all experience in general, but it also has to be tailored, right? It's kind of like your mass marketing. It's like you give someone like penicillin might
yeah,
have a specific usage and indications, but hey, your situation might not require the right dosage or
right.
so
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I think it really is tailored to not just the person, but also where you are in the cycle, your situation, how you've come across, how the coffee chat's been going. All those things are definitely variables that you need to dial in. And also into the CTA, which is the last piece of
yeah.
this, besides the thank you note, which we'll also talk about. The CTA needs to be if you had an absolutely terrible coffee chat, and I don't mean that it's because they grilled you. I mean because they clearly hate you. It's
Ha.
probably not going to help you to ask them for other people if you really think that the answer is no. But actually, I guess I would say just shoot your shot anyway and just see.
Yeah.
Um, but you want to be a little sensitive with the CTA and how far you'd push that if you sense that it didn't go well, and not from a grilling perspective, but from like a personal perspective. But what do you usually tell people to do for like a CTA, or do you?
So I will say is this is where being an active listener throughout the coffee chat is super valuable. You don't need to talk the whole
Mhm.
30 minutes. If you're talking the whole 30 minutes, that's probably not a good thing. Right? If you're getting the other guy to talk for most of the 30 minutes, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah,
And so, like, listen to them. Did they mention something very specific that's interesting, right? A unique viewpoint?
yeah.
Or maybe they mentioned something they worked on, like, let's say maybe they worked on, I don't know, I'm trying to think of deals. My mind's getting blurry. Maybe they worked on the recently announced Dominion Nextera deal, right? And they talked about an easy way to keep the conversation moving and get connected to other folks. Be like, man, I heard you mention the Dominion deal, and they went after this particular strategy because they're trying to build out hydrogen or nuclear power plants. Do you have a nuclear banker, some guy who covers it specially? Love to get his thoughts on his view. Makes it
Oh, that's a good
natural,
one.
right?
Yeah,
It's
that's a
like
good one.
just shows that you're listening and shows that you're interested in genuinely. And this is
Yeah,
just being a natural. I mean, of course, maybe you weren't paying attention and the guy didn't give you anything. Then there's the thing, be like, look, really appreciate your time and like, would love to stay in touch. You okay with I send up my follow up resume? And, you know, just by the way, I'm very interested in the firm. I want to be part of the process. What advice do you have, or what do you suggest for next steps? Ask them on the spot. If the guy likes you and is trying to help you and says, like, yeah, maybe it's like, I'll put you in touch with somebody, right? Or maybe,
yeah,
or right. Sometimes you just got to make the ask. So it can go. This comes better with skill and with practice. So I mean, it's art and science, right? Just like financial modeling evaluation.
yeah. Just like financial modeling and valuation, it's
Yeah.
like peas in a pod.
Hmm.
Uh, Yeah, I think one thing is like I think that's actually a really good idea is like if you follow up on like I'd love to talk to more people about this particular topic if there's like a topic that came up. the way that you framed it specifically is like the problem is if you say, "Do you guys have a nuclear banker?" They could just say no, and that's kind of the end of it. So maybe you want to
Yeah.
broaden that a little bit. But
Broaden it, phrase
I
it in a
think the
way. Yeah.
I think the idea of that is a really good one. Um, so the thank you note. Let's cover this. And to me, this is like a pretty minor thing. It's minor in that it needs to exist. Within 24 hours, you should send a thank you note. You should
Yeah.
detail a little bit of what you talked about and just saying thanks for taking the time. I'll look forward to talking to these people that you mentioned once you can send over their information. Um, and nothing really crazy there. I think just be prompt about it. I don't know if do you have any different approach to that, Ryan?
Similarly, I'd say drop in one line item about something you talked about,
Yeah.
just so it shows you're paying attention or
Yeah.
memorable.
Hmm.
I personally tell people to include their resume because it makes it easier for somebody to reference you or to forward your message along,
Yeah.
right? So think of it
Totally.
this way. Drop in. Thank you for the time chatting. I appreciate your thoughts on the Dominion Nextera deal. If you want to add another specific point, and would love to have you connect me with some of your colleagues who worked on it. I've attached my resume below. Love to stay in touch, right? Makes it
Yeah.
easier. And think of it from my perspective is like, I'm lazy, I'm tired, I'm overworked. If you make it very easy for me to remember you, if you make it very easy
Yep.
for me to forward your resume,
Hmm.
if you just make it easy so I could circle back up, if you come reach out to me in 2 or 3 months and I'm trying to figure out, remember who the hell you were and your resume is not there, right? Make life easy, right? This is the
Yeah.
whole sales game is make it easier
Yeah.
for them to say yes. And then play into people's natural psychological habits, right? Is, they're classic things like, for example, when you talk to someone, mirror somebody, right? Understand them. And this is where the whole homework comes in. Is make it feel like this guy's found like the perfect match in you or they see themselves in you. Right? I'm not telling you to
Hmm.
be a chameleon. I'm telling you to understand your client. Right?
Yeah.
This is not being fake. It is tailoring to what they need and what their interests are. Right? Now,
Hmm.
obviously, you're not going to, if you're like, if you found out the client likes perfumes and you're a guy, you're not going to be like, oh, you like Chanel 25? Right? Well, what about Burberry 13? I mean, like, everyone knows that's going to be like complete BS, right? But anyhow, I
Sure.
digress. So.
So, all right. So tell us, what's the worst coffee chat you've heard about or been involved in?
I wouldn't say there's a few bad ones, and like I probably had a few bad ones myself because I didn't know bloody hell what the heck I was doing. The worst ones are the ones that it's very clear you don't know what you're doing in the first few minutes is you're wasting my time, or you come across as an arrogant prick. Which I've
Mm.
seen both, right? Um, I think I may have told this one on another session of coffee chats where, some kid calls me, right? And, I take the time to answer. And then the first question after the tell me about yourself, I'm like, why do you want to do investment banking? Obviously, the guy doesn't even know what investment banking is or haven't thought it through. He responds, because I want to work really, really hard. Right. I'm like, okay. You want to work really, really hard. Right. All right. I'm like, I'm going to give him another chance, but I already know the back of my head. This is a lost cause. So I ask him, all right, so okay, you want to work really, really hard. Which division of investment banking do you want to work in? Which crew? He goes, sales and trading. All right, at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm just like, bro. Well, I don't say bro. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna be straight with you. You don't, and I guess I was kind of being a nice in a sense by being so blunt. I'm like, okay, you don't know what the heck in investment banking, and I will be honest with you is if you do this coffee chat with anyone else, the call may be even done now. Right.
Right.
I'm like, and so I ended up going, I was just honest with him because I told him, I'm like, look, unless you prepare better, right, you're an auto reject. Right. And then we dived into the deeper, right? It was basically a 30-minute therapy session for him. It's like, so why do you want to do investment banking? Right. And he's like,
Yeah.
the prestige and the money, right? And I was like, you don't even know what the hell that is. And I was like, the hours really suck. Right. And then I gave him a wake up call. And we're just like, look, last night I was here till 3 a.m. Right. And I don't like, and it's still going. I haven't had a weekend in forever. Right. And then I was like, and he was like telling how his parents wanted him to do banking. So it was like a 30-minute of like, okay, let's go back to
Yeah.
his like village where he's from, his childhood, his hometown, and why he went. I don't know, like, but
Yeah.
anyhow,
Here's the worst investment banking coffee chat that I've had.
hmm
Uh, Something in the beginning came up where it was like, oh, my in-laws are in town or something like that. And I just was like, oh, that's got to be kind of rough. Because I don't know, I don't have in-laws. So to me, I was always just thought that people just like don't super get along well with their in-laws. But it turns out
yeah.
that they do. And they were just like, no, like not at all. Like I love my family, all this stuff. And I was just like, okay, let's talk about the market. It was just like it was just a rough. I mean, you sometimes and that's you know stuff like that happens on coffee chats, on dates, on other things, and you kind of just try to recover as best as you can.
Yeah.
But you both know that it's super awkward. I don't even remember how that situation turned out. Like if I ended up moving forward with them, I don't think it like totally bombed me because it was just a
hmm
minor thing, but it was just like just such a rough start to a conversation. So I would
Yeah.
just try to be very careful with what you say in a coffee chat, especially in the beginning, because you'll have to sit through the pain of the next 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, let's do a couple other quick ones. So how many coffee chats do you need to have?
Honestly, in today's market, have as many as you can. It's like
Yeah.
there's no guaranteed. I had one kid who had like maybe 10, 15 coffee chats with B of A and didn't even get a first round interview. But
Yeah.
like this is like also because of the whole higher view stuff that's going on now, which makes things
Mm,
very hit and miss.
yeah.
I would say also aim for quality over quantity, right? Especially at the MBA level. I think
Yep.
MBAs somehow think of this as like some magic formula. If I talk to 10 people, I get more. I'm like, no, I had some kids that just like couldn't get it into their brain. I had a kid from Kellogg. He's like, look, I talked to 15 people at Baird, and I think they all went very well. And then he didn't get an interview. He didn't even get a first round interview.
Mm,
And so, and then like I ended up like, so this is like, and he had reached out to me to prep for technicals. I'm like, are you okay with coffee? He's like, no, I don't need any help on my coffee chats. I got a
yep.
ton of coffee chats lined up. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And then it wasn't until he's like, I don't understand. I had 15 coffee chats with Baird. Why the hell did I not get an interview?
Yeah.
I was like, I mocked him with the first 5 minutes. He was telling me like how he loved coffee shops and being a barista. I'm like, how the hell is this related? And he's like, yeah, all my coffee chats, we just end up talking about coffee and how much we love coffee. I'm like, yeah, no shit. The guy didn't want to waste time on you
Yeah,
talking about
dude.
other things.
He thinks
So
you should work at Starbucks, my dude.
yeah. So
That's a good, yeah. I mean, it's another like kind of side point, but like I feel like a lot of people hire me for coaching and they say they have a sense of, oh, I want to work on this. And then I actually talk to them because one of the first things I almost always do with people that I work with is sort of a diagnostic, like mock interview type of thing.
yeah.
And a lot of times I'm like, dude, you're not even like this you're not ready, you're not going to get to the technical interview part, like
Yeah.
you're not really there yet, you're not going to pass the vibe check, you're not going to get there. um on the coffee chat quantity, one thing I'll say is that some banks really value that more than others. So like
Yes.
the people that I know who landed at JPM, most of them did over 20 coffee chats, which is crazy. I mean, that's a crazy amount of logistics. Just
Yes.
organizing 20 meetings is just insane. But that's how they
Ugh.
do it. If you're doing well, they're going to keep shuttling you along to more
Yes.
people and you're just going to talk to a ton of people. Other banks, like I went to final rounds with Catalyst and I think I had one coffee chat and I had one first round interview. And so there was no like they're not interested in doing a bunch of coffee chats. That's just not how they do things. So
Yeah.
and then others have a structured process, right? Centerview had like a structured process where it was like, here's the three people or whatever number of people that you're going to talk to. and they didn't really, it wasn't like a free for all where it's like talk to as many people as you can. So there isn't any set number. You really want as Ryan said, the quality. You want people that are actually going to back you, and not just people that you can say, "Oh, I have talked to them." You want people that will
Yeah.
remember you and that will pass you along. And that is really what you're trying to do with a coffee chat: is create a relationship that you'll follow up on. Um, that's all the time that we have. I hope that what we've talked about has been super, super useful. You can find more information on our descriptions on our YouTube channel. You can find our shorts on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everywhere. Reach out. You can schedule time with me or Ryan. Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. I don't know if we're on Amazon, but find us wherever you need to. And we'll see you next week.
All
Bye.
right. It's been good with you all. Take care.